Hey everybody, Jared Jones. The housing narrative has just shifted from buyers that having fear of missing out and really trying to capitalize purchasing anything that they can, to now ending up with the idea that, hey, as a buyer, I sure am glad I didn't buy a house. Because right now, things are shifting fast. The crash has just begun. And I know a lot of folks a lot of times watch my videos, they jump on after they see, one of these thumbnails and they say, hey, you know what, what's going on? Prices aren't crashing. Yeah, they're crashing. Now, effectively, you can see trends which are showing that prices across the country are starting to fall. Particularly, really of a concern is the seasonality of the housing market being disrupted. And seasonality, by the way, is the idea that certain times of the year the housing market really outperforms. So June and July being a couple of the biggest months that we always have on record throughout the country. That's a time when schools let out and people tend to put their houses on the market and get active. This time, we are now seeing from June to July, prices have decelerated and fell through several markets throughout the country. June to July is historically a price growth month. And when you take that in consideration, what we're seeing now is absolutely disruptive in the marketplace. And what is causing it? Well, housing affordability is the number one concern. The housing affordability charts that we have people that are basically tied to a specific mortgage, considering what all their household expenses, household affordability has now hit a 30-year low. So when folks a lot of times will send me comments or they'll write me and say, hey, Jared, it's only a 7% interest rate. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that it costs more money to buy a house with a 7% interest rate than it does probably at any time in history. Why? Because insurance is off the charts expensive. Your energy costs are off the charts expensive to pay for the utilities for that house. Your expenses for taxes, your expenses for your car, your food bill has tripled. Like the 7% in household ownership, and again, I know ownership is basically your household expenses. People are now more affected by what's going on in the housing market than more than ever before, okay? So, we haven't seen a 7% interest rate, by the way, in 15 years. But being that as it may, you're now in a position where buyers are stuck. They're literally in a position where they're just not moving forward. Demand is falling through the floor. And as I reported a week ago, what Jerome Powell has come out and said is we are just getting this party started with high interest rates. It is going to get worse, folks. I am telling you, as soon as Jerome Powell said that last week, he said basically we're going to release $95 billion in reversing treasuries. You got to understand the backstopping of this marketplace is coming off. And I don't believe it's come off to this degree that we're going to see in September and for the next 90 days. That according to what Jerome Powell has been saying, the tightening is here. Like it's going to hit full stride, and we're now going to see, I believe, interest rates hit some of the highest numbers in this entire span of time. Now, keep this in mind. At the same time that you're seeing all these, issues with buyers basically stopping, any seller that could get the message has also stopped. So we're also seeing inventory getting stagnant. We're seeing record high amount of price reductions throughout the marketplace. And then again, I told you seasonality, June to July was the highest loss of price deceleration from a 1 month span of time in like 8 years. So it was like 2011 where we saw a June to July transition and a price decrease like we saw in those 2 months. And again, depends on your market, right? This is a macro discussion. It's across all the nation. Your marketplace may have done worse. I will tell you this, I get a lot of folks from the Western states saying, oh, it doesn't look that bad in LA right now, Jared. I'm gonna tell you, if you look at the data, LA is in trouble, San Diego's in trouble, San Jose is in trouble, Seattle's in trouble. Big reductions in price so far. And I'm talking about, those are expensive homes. So some of these areas in the country where you have some of the most expensive real estate, some of the most expensive economies as far as a state of which to live in, these people are getting pinched beyond belief. And then, as I mentioned at the same time, you're seeing the fluidity of the market stop. So there was so much transition in the past 2 years. All the stories, right? Oh, I could live in Miami and I could work for my company in Ohio and I could sit on the beach and work remote. Well, so much of the real estate market over the past 2 years has been muddied because of the population fluidity, how much people were moving from one area to the next. So, keep in mind, you might be looking around and you're seeing these reports that I've been putting on. You're saying, well, Jared, you're a little off base because I don't see this in my economy yet. Well, you might be one of the benefactors of all these people moving into your city from another area. You gotta understand that fluidity is dying in front of us right now. So much so that builders are absolutely hitting the brakes. Inventory is now over 10 months for all stages of construction. I reported last week about how the builders are basically 8 months straight, their sentiment has been dropping on the Wells Fargo surveys, and they are in a position saying this is a bad market. In fact, I sell homes and people still come to me and buy homes. And you'll say, Jared, you mean people want to buy homes from you after you basically depress them all week long on these videos? And the point is, I'm going to be honest with you, but I also think there's a time when you should still buy a house. I'm going to share that at the end of this video, but let me tell you what builders are doing. I had a client this week want to go buy from one of the largest builders in the nation. The builder said, hey, Jared, we will pay you double what we used to pay you 3 months ago. So we'll give you twice the commission. It's like $7,000 more. We'll also give your client $8,000. We'll buy their interest rate down to 3.99%, which that is a very expensive maneuver. But we're also, on top of that, I got another $10,000 of flexible money just to reduce the price. Like, no questions asked. Up front. It's like the builder they know what's going on, folks. They saw what Powell said in Jackson Hole in the past week. They know that the true tightening is coming, that we're about to really, really see a ratcheting up of an interest rate in a marketplace that's already tested to the max. Like, we hit 6.5, 6.75 in June, and we all of a sudden had price deceleration in one of the hottest months of the year. I mean, think about that, folks. Like, now we're going into September and the Fed is gonna they are gonna slam the brakes in terms of how they're backstopping the mortgage market and dumping MBS back off of their sheets, okay? 95 billion was announced. Every month, and I believe for 3 months straight. So you think 6.5 is a high interest rate for a 30-year? We're gonna be 7.5, probably 8% before that's over, maybe higher. And already, you're seeing the market jammed up. You're seeing sellers afraid to even put their house on the market. So that's being diminished. And all the while, there's no inventory and there's no buyers to buy what little homes there are. I mean, the demand in the marketplace has just shifted because it's gotten so expensive. Home affordability is bad. So listen, don't look at the interest rate, folks, and say, oh, it's 7-8%. Tell me how, of course in the 70s and the 80s, we saw double-digit interest rates and it was really high. Yes, but the money doesn't go as far. Like, the consumer is gonna be paying for the housing expenses at a record high number. That's what housing affordability is. So it's never cost this much as it does now to buy a home with a 7-8% interest rate. Does that make sense? In times past, if you got a 7 or 8% interest rate, the housing expense for that person was far lower than it is now with a 7-8% interest rate. So, one thing people don't factor is that housing in that situation is going to take a lot more of a person's money, okay? Now, couple that with all the other issues that we have in the economy, which is we have crazy high price of everything. It costs you money to go to the grocery store ×3, gas tank ×2, insurance for your house, for your car, all much more expensive, medical expenses, you name it, the consumer has nothing to work with. Now, at the same time, the Fed's gonna be pushing interest rates, which is gonna result in layoffs, which is gonna result in more people in the housing market or the buying job market looking for a job. People, instead of employers fighting for employees are gonna be fighting against each other to find a person to hire them, which you think that's gonna keep our job wages high? Come on, folks. Multiple high-level economists, respected economists, came out this week and said 2023 is going to be a legend of a recession. A legend of a recession. Steve Hank, the John Hopkins economist, 2023 is gonna be bad. The reason why he said it's bad is because people are going broke. And he said the Fed isn't even paying attention to it. He made a valid point. He said, hey, for 5 months straight, the M2 money supply, which is a calculation of all the money in savings and deposits, It's been down for 5 months. It's not been growing, which means he's saying people are getting poorer in real time. And the Fed it's not even on their radar screen, which means they're gonna be eviscerating jobs with austerity measures to get in control of inflation, and it's gonna have an outcome which is gonna be detrimental in 2023 and maybe even 2024. One of my early mentors and the writer of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the fame of Robert Kiyosaki, who is a sound businessman, investor, a heck of a marketer, I'd say as well, I'll give him that. But he said, it's a crash. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bigger and worse than '08. And that's a respectable guy. He has no reason to tell people hey, look out for deals, mind your cash. And, he's not a guy that's got some reality to push with that, And so these are people that are, calling what's going on. And there is real concern. We had another mortgage company this week go out of business. So, housing starts are down 10%. So builders are already scared, pulling back out of the market. Mortgage companies are running out of business. So you had First Guarantee Mortgage a week ago. I forgot the company's name, forgive me. I'm shooting these in one shot when I do these one-take videos. So they're prone for error in my forgetfulness. But it was a company, I think it was called AmeriWest, something like that. They lost hundreds of employees. They were funding a lot of loans last year, and now they're done. And obviously there's gonna be many, many more to close. There's gonna be many real estate agents going out of business in the next year and a half. Many of them, a huge chunk. And so you're gonna see a lot of disruption in construction. You're gonna see a lot of disruption in all facets relating to the real estate industry. It's the nature of the beast. But it's not just us, it's not just real estate. You're already having every tech company that you can think of has sent out notification that they're gonna be culling down their workforces. Every one of them. Some of the most successful companies on the planet are in the same position, and recession is coming. And as a result, one thing that we need to be considering for those of you that are sitting there, every week someone says, we have a shortage of housing. And so as long as, where are these houses gonna come from? That is one thing that we often forget of what happens whenever recession hits, is people double up and triple up in houses, okay? So all of you that sit there and think, where are the buyers buying? Okay, they're not buying in the marketplace, and rents are stabilizing, so that means there's not a whole bunch of people fighting over places. Like, what is everybody doing? Where do they live now? Well, understand that every time we go in recession, there's a little known situation that starts to unfold in recessionary economy where people start to live in other people's houses. Kids live with parents. Parents live with kids. They move back in with their kids. You have generational living experience. I mean, ask anyone in real estate in the last year and a half, how many large homes we sold for people planning to take their parents in, to take their children in, whatever the situation, co-living, house hack, all of it is happening. Man, I mean, that is really what is taking root. And you have these factors happening where REO is starting to show up again. Okay, delinquency is starting to grow in different pockets throughout the country, still very low. But the reality is recession can set off supply like you've never seen. Recession in 2008, coupled with risky lending, recession in our marketplace now, coupled with no buyers. I mean, come on. Sellers that have to sell are going to bring the price to where a buyer is going to meet it. They're going to get out of the house. And when that happens, you see what's happening now is we have a lot of homes that are actually selling below appraised value. I'm seeing comments from agents all over the country saying, oh, we just put a property under contract, it's $40,000 under recent comps. Under the recent appraisal, means they hired an appraiser to come out and a certified appraisal came in very, very low. But I say all that to say this, am I still selling houses to buyers? Because a lot of people say these questions to me, Jared, what do you do? Like, you're a broker, aren't you? And I would say, yeah, but I'm also a broker that puts the knowledge out there, and I also tell buyers the truth. Like, there's two instances right now that I think you should still buy a house. but only under these two. Number one, if you're planning to buy very short term, or if you're planning to buy very long term. Number one, under 4 or 5 month hold, which is typically like a flip situation, or long term, minimum 5 years, and more like a 5 to 10 year plan. Folks that are they just know that their future and their belief is that housing is their main investment. That's a smart play, and that's the play that you should keep. But me, like, I'm a little different. If you have my situation, if you have a big primary residence and it's got a huge amount of equity and it grew, like, I'm gonna work that market. I'm gonna get my money out and I'm gonna invest it somewhere else, and I'm gonna let the market calm, and then I'm gonna come back into it. So, but I have people that they would hear me say that and they'd be like, I don't care, I'm gonna buy a house. Like, I don't wanna move 3 times, you know? So I'm not against it, but I will say, you know, right now we got a real problem in America, and housing to own has gotten a lot more expensive than to rent. And when that's taking place, demand's gonna shutter, and with Powell pushing interest rates, I'm telling you, you people that doubt me, you're gonna see these prices changing real quick. And it's not a stock, so no, it's not gonna change today. It's gonna take time. It's not an event, it's a process. But I'm telling you, you think your market hasn't changed, give it time. And it's around the corner, it's sooner than you think.